Oh!
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 Oh! Oh!
Yeah!
You did it! You did it!
Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. This is the first guide of many to come in Season 4, and what better champion to start with than Grohk? Grohk is one of the many support champions in Paladins who plays like a jack of all trades, able to heal, do damage, support his team with movement speed buffs, and even battle enemy tanks on point when necessary. He has a lot of different playstyles to choose from, and is a lot more complex than you might have originally thought. So, this guide will consist of everything you need to know in order to do well with Grohk, including a base overview of his abilities, general tips and tricks, and a plethora of different builds for a variety of situations. In the making of this guide, I got some help from Hossphere, a legendary Grohk main with more than twice as much experience as I do. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. He makes a lot of content revolving around everyone's favorite blue orc. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Alright, let's start off with an overview of his base kit. Grohk is a lightning orc, capable of channeling the power of lightning to heal his teammates and dish out damage. His primary fire is a lightning staff, which is a beam weapon that ramps up damage the longer it's connected to a target. When you first connect to a target, it will deal 750 damage per second, and it will ramp up for about 2 seconds until it reaches its peak of 980 damage per second. This is incredibly high DPS for a support to have, and it makes Grohk a lethal enemy to fight. However, Grohk's lightning staff cannot hit headshots, and has considerable drop off at range until 120 units away, where it will no longer connect with any target. This makes Grohk most effective at close to medium range. You can fire your lightning staff for 5 seconds before it needs to reload, and if you stop firing for half a second, it will start regenerating ammo. It will take an additional second to fully recharge. Alternatively, if you let the staff run completely out of ammo, it will go through a 3-second long reload animation. You never want to let it run completely out of ammo, but instead just wait the 1.5 seconds for it to fully recharge when it gets low. When he uses the talent Spirit's Domain, he'll heal teammates he hits with his lightning staff for a flat 700 healing per second. Grohk's next ability is his Shock Pulse. This ability is an electric projectile that bounces between enemies 5 times after hitting the initial target, dealing 150 damage with each bounce. It does not apply Cauterize, but it will reveal enemies who are out of line of sight of Grohk to him for half a second. This will not reveal the enemies to teammates, however. Shock Pulse will also bounce to deployables such as Luna, Ying's Illusions, and Barracks turrets, making this an especially effective ability when going against enemies with deployables. This ability also has an interesting effect on Grohk's overall DPS on a target. If Shock Pulse can bounce between the enemy Grohk is shooting at and another target, it will make his overall DPS higher. However, if he fires the Shock Pulse while shooting at an enemy and the pulse doesn't bounce to another target, his DPS on the enemy will be lower. This means Shock Pulse is best used against multiple enemies, and should not be used at all against just a single target with no nearby deployables or teammates. When he uses Maelstrom, his weapon shots will reduce the cooldown of Shock Pulse by half a second, and Shock Pulse will chain to 4 additional enemies. His next ability is Healing Totem, which allows him to deploy a healing totem that heals all teammates within its radius for 300 healing a second. His totem has 2 charges, and its effects stack, meaning that if you place 2 totems near a teammate, he'll be healed for 600 healing a second. His totem has a placement range of 100 units, and will place 10 units behind where the crosshair is targeting. He can also place the totem against and behind walls, as well as on platforms above Grohk. Take a look at this clip Hossphere and I recorded of some examples of this on Brightmark.
Oh, you can also deploy things over walls, like this.
Yeah, you can deploy past the wall. So basically just look above the wall and then, boom, now it's behind the wall. Also, if you want to cancel placing a totem, then just look up and wait for the X and then release. Easy.
Or you can just right-click as you have it up.
That also works, yeah.
Bruh. This is
yeah, if you place it on high ground, won't it still? Yeah, it'll still heal you, so...
Yeah.
That's another thing you can do.
Like, I think...
What is that?
Oh, yeah, you can do that.
What?
But that doesn't really help you because it's too far up. It heals you up.
Hey, if you have a Drogo's flying up there.
just throw it up and hey, Drogos, have some of that.
There you go, check my healing. What the heck? But yeah, like here. Here is good enough.
Yeah, you can get healed from there.
Nice little healing, and nobody's going to be shooting that. Grohk's totem placement takes some getting used to, but mastering it will help you improve at healing allies no matter where they are. Grohk's totems have 1,250 health and are affected by Bulldozer, so you have to be careful where to place them where they'll heal your teammates but can't be destroyed, such as behind walls or to the side of where the main source of damage is coming from. Grohk's totems will also heal teammates below them within a certain range, so placing totems on the high ground can also be a viable option. Let's head back to Brightmarsh for some more examples of proper totem placement. What are we doing?
Oh, okay. Showing good and bad example of totem placement.
Alright.
So,
here's a great example of what not to do. Let's just, oh. Look, it's behind you!
Oh!
That's a great totem position. Yeah.
Yeah!
Yeah, so you want to be careful when placing the totems, you know, kind of. You can see sort of where it's going to go if you just hold down the ability. So, place it there. That would be still kind of bad, because your tank's going to be like here. Like somewhere like here. Well, yeah, if they're standing on this part of the objective, then yeah. Maybe a little bit closer, depending on, like, how much they're spamming.
Yeah.
Or, alternatively, there we go. Sort of out of sight, out of the way. You know, we're fighting on point. Not really focusing on the totem. There we go.
Like preferably you want to try to place it at a wall and where they can't really hit it.
Yeah, you want to make it hard to hit. Like there. Like, sort of hard to hit. Like, if the enemies are here, shooting here, and there's a totem there, I'm going to prioritize shooting this way, and the totem's going to be out of the way. Or, you know, just completely do this thing. Completely behind the wall, but I'm still getting healed here. So if your teammates are, like, chilling in this area... I guess a better demonstration that's sort of not on the point would be, like, over here. Say there's an Androxus shooting, you know, a roundabout over there. Place the totem there, your teammate's here, getting healed, and they can easily kill the Androxus. Nice and easy. Or like here. I'm fighting someone, they're over here, place the totem there. Nice. Whereas if I place the totem here, they can blow that up. No problem. And in general, just put it behind walls. Try not to get your totems shot. And they don't really work for body blocking the same as the illusions do. Like, you can't block a Drogozolt with them, for example. Which would be silly. It'd be very silly. So yeah, you want to protect them best you can. Like this. Not like... put it in the center point. Unless you got like shields or something on point. Like if there's a half shell Mako there, then go wild. Go ahead. But if there's not a half shell Mako and you just got like, I don't know, a Nara or something, probably best to place them a little bit safer. Lastly, Grohk's totems can, in fact, be placed on the payload. However, they won't stick to the payload and move with it like other deployables do. Instead, if the payload moves away from the totem, it will simply float in midair. How? I don't know. I think it's better not to ask. Grohk's healing totems can be augmented by the talent Totemic Ward, which increases the healing per second of each totem to 390 and grants Grohk 3 charges of his totems instead of 2, so he can spread the healing out even farther. However, as we'll see later, this talent isn't nearly as beneficial as Spirit's Domain is for solo healing. One of Grohk's most important abilities is his Ghost Walk, which is his movement ability and a helpful way to evade damage. Ghost Walk allows Grohk to walk around for a brief period while in a ghost form, meaning any debuffs such as Cauterize are cleansed, and he can walk through enemies in any source of damage, from bullets to arrows to bombs. It lasts for 2 seconds and increases the movement speed by 50%. You can also cancel it early if you so choose. This is an extremely powerful ability for evading damage and healing up quickly in the heat of combat, but it has an incredibly lengthy cooldown of 15 seconds, so you have to be careful not to waste it. Grohk can also be healed during Ghost Walk even while walking through Dead Zone, so the best time to heal Grohk is when he's using Ghost Walk. Ideally, you also want to Ghost Walk through your own totem, so that you can get the maximum amount of self-healing in the midst of battle. When timed properly, Ghost Walk can make Grohk incredibly hard to kill. Lastly, Grohk's ultimate is Tempest, which is honestly one of the coolest ultimates in the game. Tempest has a little bit of everything. It grants Grohk crowd control immunity and flight, and it gives him and 3 allies 700 healing per second and 50% increased movement speed. It also slows 3 nearby enemies for 60% and deals 400 damage per second to them. This makes Grohk's ult one of the best ultimates for bringing his team back to the objective or payload and pushing through choke points, and it can turn the tide of a battle. It also doesn't cast until 3/4 of a second after activation, and will not use the ultimate charge until that 3/4 of a second has passed. Grohk's ultimate will also target invisible enemies with its damage, making it a great way to kill invisible enemies such as Strix, Skye, or Shaolin without needing to buy Illuminate or wait for one of your teammates to assist you. His ultimate also charges incredibly quickly as a side effect of using Maelstrom and hitting your shock pulses continuously, and you absolutely want to buy morale boost for this amazing ultimate. Alright, now let's talk about Grohk's different builds. There are numerous different ways to play Grohk, with a standard build for Grohk being a Spirit's Domain solo healer build that looks something like this. Any good healing build will use the card Gale, which will reset the cooldown of one of your totems by 3 seconds whenever you use Ghost Walk. When you use this card, you want to try and use Ghost Walk when your totem has about 4 seconds or more left on its cooldown, so you get the maximum use out of your loadout points. Of course, this shouldn't stop you from Ghost Walking if you're in a life or death situation, but it should be kept in mind for when you're trying to maximize your healing output. Spirit's Grace is another amazing card to have in just about any Grohk loadout. It can increase you and your teammates' movement speed by up to 40% while in the radius of your healing totems and for 1 second after leaving them, which can help them to be harder to hit or to chase an enemy down. Spirit's Grace also stacks, so if you have 2 totems within range of each other, then you'll receive 2 procs of Spirit's Grace, with a bit of diminishing returns of course. In this particular loadout, I have it at level 3, which is more than enough. Of course, if you want, you could go for this alternate build that has the card maxed out, for all the speed! Grohk is blue for a reason, after all. Lastly, I have Electrostatic and Thunderlord for ammo uptime, since you'll spend a lot of time shooting your teammates to keep them topped off. Outreach is a good filler to have, since it will give you a bit of extra reach on your healing totems. Now, with a Spirit's Domain build, your primary form of healing is your Lightning Staff, since it can heal for 100 more healing per second than both of your healing totems combined. You primarily want to use it on your tanks and any allies who are in immediate danger, and then use your totems on teammates who are in a harder position to be healed, either behind walls or too far away for you to effectively heal them. Of course, your staff doesn't have any falloff when you're healing teammates, but you do have to keep in mind that it will still cut off at 120 units, so totems can be a better option for healing at long range, especially with the Outreach card in your loadout. And if your tank or someone is at critical health levels, you can stack a totem and your lightning staff on them to heal them for 1000 healing per second, and in an especially tense battle, you can stack 2 totems and the staff for 1300 healing per second on one target. Of course, by doing this, you're investing all your resources into one area, which can hinder your ability to spread healing across multiple teammates. And as a last-ditch effort, you can go Super Saiyan mode on your teammates by placing 2 totems, using Gale to reset the cooldown of one of your totems, place a 3rd totem, and then heal with your staff for 1600 healing per second on one target. Of course, this is only really possible with Chronos 3, but it's still a helpful way to hyper-concentrate a lot of healing resources onto one teammate who is in desperate need of healing. And of course, anyone else in range of the 3 totems will still be healing for 900 healing a second, so it's not the worst thing in the world to do in the direst of situations. But if you don't have to do this technique, then you really don't want to. Another technique you can do with Grohk is to place down your 2 totems near your teammates, and use your ultimate to push back into the enemy team while providing some good healing to your teammates. His ultimate heals for 700 healing per second, which is the same as your staff, so you're not really losing out on any healing by doing this. In fact, you're actually giving your team even more healing if you're healing multiple teammates at once, and if they're also walking through your totems, this can be a powerful way to push back to the objective or break through a choke point. As healer Grohk, you never want to carelessly use your totems. All the totem placement tips from the overview still apply here in terms of positioning, but you also want to be careful not to waste a totem on someone who doesn't necessarily need it. If the fight is at a lull and the enemy team has been pushed back, you don't want to use your totems at all, since you may not have them back in time for when the enemies start to push you again. You also usually don't want to waste a totem on someone who is currently in a safe position and can heal up out of combat. Tapping them with your staff for a second should do the trick, and doing so will conserve your totem cooldown for someone in more dire need of immediate healing. To quote Hosphere, as a Grohk support, you are micromanaging your resources. Carefully using your totems can spell doom to your teammates or yourself when you need it. You also shouldn't be afraid to use a totem on yourself if you need it. With Spirit's Domain, you're almost constantly in combat since you're shooting your teammates, so you'll never really have a good chance to heal yourself without using a totem on yourself. An alive healer who used a totem on themselves to keep themselves alive is more valuable to the team than a dead healer who tried too hard to heal their teammates and didn't keep themselves alive. Also, with Spirit's Domain, you usually want to get Chronos first for more uptime on your totems and Ghost Walk, followed by Morale Boost, since his ultimate is so powerful. After that, you should usually prioritize some form of damage reduction to make you harder to kill. Next, let's talk about Maelstrom. Maelstrom is a great damage talent for when you anticipate the enemy team will be grouped up, because it can let you score large amounts of area damage that will soften up the enemy team for your teammates to finish them off, and will also give you an impressively fast ultimate charge rate as well. It's best used against teams with multiple tanks or deployables, but it's not as effective against teams that will be more spread out and have no deployables. A good Maelstrom build looks something like this, with Lightning Rod at level 4 or 5 for some wicked self-sustain once you get those bounces going. You also want to have Thunderstruck at level 2, since this will recharge your ammo as you spend it shooting the enemies while your bounces are going off. You don't need to have this card at any higher, because level 2 is enough to sustain your ammo needs. Another card you'll often find in a Maelstrom build is Arc Lightning, which increases the chain range of Shock Pulse. This is a helpful card to reach more enemies, but it's not necessary to have this card at level 5, because his other cards are simply more impactful and help his build out more. Lastly, I have Spirit's Grace so I can dodge faster while inside healing totems, and Shamanic Might as a filler for a bit of extra HP. With Maelstrom, you primarily want to use your totems on yourself while you're fighting an enemy to give you the edge over them in sustain, and also to dodge around faster in conjunction with the Spirit's Grace card. In a group fight, you'll want to constantly be pumping out shock pulses, ideally aiming them at deployables for a guaranteed connection and bounce throughout the enemy team. You actually don't want to shoot deployables at all with your lightning staff, instead leaving them alive so you can farm up damage with your shock pulses on the enemy team. In a 1v1 situation with someone who doesn't have deployables, you don't actually want to use the Shock Pulse at all due to the way Grohk's primary fire works. You see, Shock Pulse interrupts the ramping up of his Lightning Rod long enough to reset his DPS down to 750. This is negligible in a large group fight because the bouncing of your Shock Pulse is a net gain in DPS, but in a 1v1 where your Shock Pulse can't bounce between enemies and deployables, you'll actually end up killing the enemies slower than if you didn't fire the Shock Pulse at all, if you can even manage to kill them before they kill you. In a 1v1, it's better just to focus down an enemy with your powerful Lightning Rod with a fully ramped up damage. This is actually why Maelstrom isn't as good into team comps that won't be grouped up as much, such as those with multiple flanks, because you won't be getting into many situations where you'll get higher DPS by firing your Shock Pulse. Against grouped up teams with multiple tanks and deployables, however, you'll most likely always have the highest amount of damage in the lobby from all those bounces. This will give you incredible sustain with a Lightning Rod card, which makes you nearly unkillable in the early stages of the game. In the later stages when the enemies have lots of cauterize, you can use your Ghost Walk after initiating a successful bounce to reap all the sweet benefits of that Lightning Rod healing uncauterized. And of course, you should only play Maelstrom if you have a second healer on your team who can cover the healing your team needs to survive. As far as items go with this build, Morale Boost is phenomenal, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. You should still usually prioritize Cauterize first just so you can actually kill the enemies, but once you've got enough Cauterize, Morale Boost is key. He can charge up his ultimate so fast it's insane, and Morale Boost further amplifies his already ludicrous speed. Next, let's get into Grohk's other damage talent, Totemic Ward. But wait, I hear you say, isn't Totemic Ward a healing talent? Well, yes, but actually no. Totemic Ward increases the healing of his totems and gives him an extra charge, which makes it seem like it would be a decent healing talent. However, this talent is not worth it to run as a solo healer. You won't be getting nearly the same levels of healing with this talent as you will with Spirit's Domain on a single target unless you use all your totems on that single target, and if you do that, you'll be out of healing options for several seconds. If you spread them out, you'll just be giving several of your teammates pretty mediocre healing that they oftentimes just walk out of anyways. Totemic Ward is just not worth the hassle as a solo healing talent. However, where Totemic Ward shines is in giving Grohk some incredible self-sustain that can turn him into an incredible duelist. It can also be used as a hybrid talent that can help Grohk supplement his team's healing and damage when a second support is present on his team. This first Totemic Ward build is exactly that, a fully hybrid build. This uses Gale and Spirit's Grace again to give Grohk his amazing speed buffs and for totem uptime, but the way you use totems in this build is a little bit different. You still want to use the totems mostly on yourself as you fight the enemies, but you can still heal your teammates when they really need it. Since it's a hybrid build, you want to find a decent balance between healing and dealing damage. Speaking of damage, Electrostatic and Thunderlord are in this build as well, similar to the Spirit's Domain build. However, these cards serve a different purpose, to help you deal as much damage to the enemies as possible. Since you don't have to worry about healing your teammates with the lightning staff, or even healing that much at all, you can focus on shooting the enemies instead. In particular, these cards serve to make sure that you can't really run out of ammo before you kill whichever enemy you happen to be dueling. The filler card is really just personal taste. I have extra health in this build, because you can never really go wrong with that. With this playstyle, you usually want to stick with the tanks and help them to fight off other people on point, using the totems to support you and the tank while focusing down whoever comes near with your lightning staff. While your healing output won't be higher than the other support on your team, you'll still be giving your tank the boost they need to win the point fight. Alternatively, if your team is getting pestered by flanks, you can rend your services to the backline instead, supporting your teammates back there with some healing, speed, and damage. However, with this talented playstyle, you want to already have a second support on your team because it is incredibly hard to reliably keep everyone alive and healthy with this talent. Like I said earlier, this is a hybrid build, Balance is key with this build, both in doing damage and in keeping nearby teammates alive. Depending on whether you think you'll need to do more healing or damage to help your team, you should get Kronos or Cauterize first, and you can usually decide this based on how powerful your second support is on your team and how many damage champions you have. If you don't have very many powerful damage champions, you should focus more on damage and go Cauterize, but if your team has damage covered, Kronos could be more helpful to spam out more totems and assist your team in that way. Lastly, let's check out Grohk's tank build, which uses Totemic Ward. Yes, you heard that right, Grohk has a tank build. This build revolves around making Grohk as hard to kill as possible, and should be treated as an alternative damage build more focused around dueling enemies, or as a build which you can use to tank on point if your team decides not to pick a tank after you've already locked in Grohk for whatever reason. This build features Totemic Rescue and Phantom at level 5 for maximum tankiness. Totemic Rescue will give you 750 extra health in the form of a shield when you get low, and can help you last an extra second or so against an enemy you happen to be fighting. Phantom turns Ghost Walk into something similar to Atlas's Rewind, especially if you use the Ghost Walk while standing inside a totem. This will give you 500 health over the duration of the Ghost Walk, but if you cancel it early, then you won't get the full 500 health. Combine this with your totem healing, and you can go from low health to nearly full health over the duration of the Ghost Walk. Again, this loadout features Spirit's Grace. You can never have too much speed after all. This also has Shamanic Might for extra health, and Haunting for that slight cooldown reduction on Ghost Walk. Now, if you're playing this as a damage build, your goal should be to get into 1v1 situations where you can beat an enemy out by out-sustaining them while constantly dealing damage with your lightning staff. Your totems should almost exclusively be used on yourself as you fight the enemies, and you'll usually win most fights from your immense sustain. As the enemies start to get more cauterized, you'll need to play around walls more, and use your Ghost Walk as basically a second life to regen your health uncauterized. Again, if you're using this as a damage build, you should already have another healer and tank on your team. Ideally, you want to use this as a damage build if the enemy team will be spread out and you won't get much value out of Maelstrom, and it's a great idea to use against multiple flanks. You'll definitely want to get cauterized playing like this, as well as some morale boost at some point, since morale boost is just too good on Grohk. You can never go wrong with that item. Now, if you're ever in the situation where your team has a second healer but no tank, you can play Grohk as a frontline character by monitoring your surroundings and health to know when to place down your totems to heal yourself. To quote Hosphere again, you have to treat your HP as a resource bar, thinking in terms of how many hits you can take before you die, and then adjusting your healing accordingly so you don't end up dying. You need to pay attention to how many enemies are nearby and if your shielding card is available, and then time your totems and Ghost Walk to maximize the amount of time you can fight the enemies before you either die, retreat, or beat them back and no longer have to worry about dying. Playing around walls will significantly increase your chances of surviving, since you don't have any large shields like true frontline characters have. Using walls as cover and shooting the enemies while you're using your totems for sustain and Ghost Walk as a second life can make you extremely hard to kill, and can make Grohk a surprisingly adept combatant in the front lines. With this build, you should get a damage reduction item or Kronos as your first item to help you last longer on point. Your focus isn't necessarily on killing, but rather asserting your dominance on the point and being extremely annoying to kill. You should pick up Cauterize if your team is doing well and you want to help kill things, or if nothing on the enemy team is dying and you need to focus more on frags. But anyways, that's going to be the end of this video. Hopefully this extensive guide on Grohk helped you out in some way, and if it did, be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe for more content like this from me. Also, consider joining the Discord server linked in the description to pick up tips and become part of our active community. I also stream regularly on Twitch, so you should go follow me there if you would like to see me stream Paladins and occasionally some other games. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to the members of this channel for helping to support what I do. If you want to become a member of the channel today to unlock some cool new emojis and an exclusive role in the Discord server, then just click the join button right next to the subscribe button. It's cheap and it helps support the channel. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.